and welcome to this week's live weekly warm-up. I have a little bit of a weird setup today because my wife is actually working from home today and is in a meeting in the other room, and I'm also building a new computer, so I'm sort of getting that all set up. And I also forgot this bottom half of my clarinet. That's actually intentional. I'm going to be doing a really cool kind of teaching technique that teachers can use a lot, and I was actually inspired to do this today by a wonderful presentation that I saw as part of the International Clarinet Association's Plays On event that they were doing. Paula Corley did a wonderful presentation on sort of first-year clarinet curriculum and what you should be teaching and how to work with students in their first year of learning. I put a link to that in the description, so be sure to check that out if you want to see her original presentation. It had a whole bunch of other stuff besides just playing on the mouthpiece and barrel, and it was really good. And even if you aren't a first-year player, I think we can get a lot out of just working with the mouthpiece and barrel. So I wanted to talk about how we can use this as sort of a diagnostic tool to figure out what may be going wrong with our playing. There's all kinds of opportunities for things to go weird and go awry as we're playing the clarinet. And sometimes on the full body of the instrument, it's not so obvious what's going on, but sometimes those issues become really a lot more obvious on just the mouthpiece and barrel. So what we're going to do is just play a note and just hold a note on just the mouthpiece and barrel. I've talked about this before when we did the tuner tongue test, is kind of similar. In the tuner tongue test, we actually do this with a tuner and aim for an F sharp, concert F sharp, and try to get some flexibility in the pitch as well, where we go something like this. And try to get that nice and in tune and centered on the F sharp. Today I want to do something a little bit different than that though. So what this is going to be is actually working on holding a steady, stable pitch and also maybe doing some articulation, because there's lots of great stuff that can come from articulating on just the mouthpiece and barrel as well, in terms of figuring out things that you may be doing wrong. So the first thing we're going to do is just hold a note, and I just want you to sort of observe and notice what happens when you're holding just one steady note on the mouthpiece and barrel. Hopefully you get something like this, and if you try this with a tuner and can get that concert F sharp, that's even better. So hopefully that's coming across okay. I'm sure over the internet this sounds particularly enjoyable, but it's fun either way. So when you're holding just that one long note, if it's nice and steady and isn't in tune F sharp and sounds with the best sound quality that this reasonably will sound with, then you're in good shape. But you might notice some issues that aren't actually the best sound quality or that stability, and that can be an indicator of things in your clarinet playing that aren't going super well. So the first, probably most common issue would be something like this. So you can hear it's kind of a airy sound, kind of weak, but most noticeably it's really shaky. There's a lot of almost like vibrato. It's not a super stable pitch. If you were watching that on a tuner, the tuner would be jumping all over the place. And that's a good indication that, number one, your air isn't strong enough. You're not keeping the air strong and keeping the air focused. And number two, you may have some unsteadiness in your embouchure, a little shakiness in your embouchure where your pressure on the reed isn't steady. If that pressure changes, then that's going to cause a difference in the sound. And when you're doing this on the whole instrument, you may not even hear it. It may be just like the tiniest bit of wobble in the sound, but when you do it on just the mouthpiece and barrel, it really brings that out and sort of exacerbates the problem and makes it much more easy to hear and diagnose that something may be wrong. Now, another thing that is quite common that you can hear really well on the mouthpiece is something like this. That maybe wasn't as noticeable, especially over the internet, but it was a really thin, sort of tight sound. Again, on the actual instrument, it's noticeable, but not nearly as much as on this. So if you're not getting a full, clear sound like we want going through the instrument on just the mouthpiece and barrel, then you're not going to get it when it goes through the instrument. The last thing that I think this is amazing for is articulation, both just starting notes and also tonguing repeated notes. If you're tonguing on this and you get anything like this, any of those variations of anything besides just a clear, smooth, anything that's not nice and steady and smooth like that is a good indication that you are doing something weird with your tongue. So the first thing that I was trying to demonstrate was sort of the dip in the pitch. This is probably the most common one, where the quality of sound really changes at the start, and that's an indication that the tongue is moving much too far away from the reed, or even dropping down as it comes away from the reed, instead of just staying in that nice, good tongue position that we like for all articulation. The second thing is that really strong thud. That's probably an indication that you're just tonguing much too hard and really smacking the reed with your tongue, rather than just placing the tongue on the reed and then taking it straight off. The last one that's not as noticeable on the mouthpiece and barrel, but it might sound something like this. And that's where you sort of have that football shape to the notes, where it starts not really well and then grows into an actual sound. And that's an indication that your air is too weak. I will say overall on the mouthpiece and barrel, you can get away with a lot less air. So that's the one instance where this may not be helpful, is that you can play with very, very little air and get this to sound pretty okay. But if you're going for a full volume, strong, clear sound, then that's probably a good amount of air. Another thing that's very similar to this, and the same kind of immediate feedback and great diagnostic tool for all kinds of different issues, is buzzing. When you buzz, if you can do that steady, then you can probably keep it steady on just the mouthpiece and barrel as well. Buzzing is tricky because it's hard to get your lips going, and it's different than playing the clarinet, where this is exactly the same as playing the clarinet, just on the barrel and mouthpiece. With buzzing, you actually are needing to use more air to keep your lips buzzing. So buzzing is better for monitoring and diagnosing the strength and quality of the air. This is fantastic, though, if you're unable to buzz, and also fantastic for more embouchure stability and those kinds of things. So both of these tools are great to be using in your warm-up. Using just the mouthpiece and barrel is maybe not something you should do like every single time that you warm up, but every now and then check in with the tuner, see how stable things are, see how clear and smooth you can get your articulation, the note beginnings, the note endings, the quality of sound on just the mouthpiece and barrel. And then when you bring that to the full clarinet, then it's going to sound so much better, and you're going to have those tools and know exactly what you need to be paying attention to, whether that's steadier embouchure, lighter tongue, less tongue motion, more air, all of those good things that we're always talking about. This is just a tool for you to know which of those things you need to focus on. So I hope that's been helpful. Let me know if you try this, and if you come up with any like weird things, or you notice anything weird playing on just the mouthpiece and barrel. Let me know if anybody you're living with or any of your neighbors say anything funny about it. But thank you for watching this, and I'll see you next week with more of my normal background setup and also normal clarinet setup in the next live weekly warm-up.